After retiring from wildlife conservation, I bought my dream fishing cabin beside a quiet Montana lake. Every morning, I enjoyed fishing from my private dock while watching the sunrise. Life couldn't have been more peaceful, until my new HOA neighbor decided I was breaking the law. Fishing has been my passion for over 30 years. I spent my entire career helping protect America's wildlife and fisheries. Following conservation laws has always been second nature to me. That's why the accusation surprised me. My HOA neighbor frequently watched me fish from across the shoreline. She seemed convinced that I was violating wildlife regulations. Apparently, she believed private property meant public supervision. Unfortunately, she was mistaken. One afternoon, she stormed over demanding to see my fishing license immediately. She claimed residents had complained about my fishing activities. I politely informed her that she had no legal authority over my property. She didn't appreciate that answer. She insisted that wildlife officers would soon arrive to investigate me. According to her, I was illegally catching protected fish species. She appeared extremely confident in her accusations. I simply smiled and continued fishing. The following morning, 2 wildlife officers arrived at my dock. They approached professionally and introduced themselves. Karen stood nearby expecting an immediate arrest. She looked very pleased with herself. Before anyone said another word, one officer smiled and recognized me immediately. We had previously worked together during conservation projects years ago. It turns out wildlife circles are surprisingly small. Karen was visibly confused. The officers asked about my retirement and complimented my conservation work. We spent several minutes discussing local fish populations and habitat protection. Karen's expression changed with every passing second. Things weren't going according to her plan. Of course, I voluntarily showed them my valid fishing license and permits. Everything was completely legal and up to date. Conservation laws matter deeply to me. Responsible fishing always comes first. The wildlife officers thanked me for continuing to educate local anglers about conservation. They appreciated seeing private landowners actively supporting wildlife protection. Karen had become unusually quiet by this point. The truth had finally surfaced. Karen refused to believe the wildlife officers knew me personally. She immediately began accusing them of showing favoritism. The officers calmly explained that conservation laws apply equally to everyone. Facts don't change simply because someone is upset. One officer asked if I would share some of my conservation work with the younger members of his department. I gladly accepted the invitation. Teaching responsible fishing has always been important to me. Conservation begins with education. Karen continued insisting that I must be hiding something illegal. She pointed toward my fishing equipment as if it were evidence. Unfortunately for her, everything exceeded legal requirements. Preparation matters. The wildlife officers conducted a routine inspection of my fishing gear. Every permit, license, and piece of equipment passed without issue. Responsible anglers respect wildlife regulations. I have done so my entire life. One officer laughed and reminded Karen that I had actually helped draft local conservation guidelines years ago. She looked absolutely stunned by the revelation. Sometimes, assumptions lead people in the wrong direction. This was one of those moments. After the inspection, the officers thanked me for maintaining a healthy fish habitat around my property. Protecting the ecosystem benefits everyone who enjoys the lake. Conservation is a shared responsibility. Even private property owners play an important role. Karen finally asked why wildlife officers seemed to know me so well. I explained that I had spent more than 3 decades working alongside conservation professionals. Wildlife protection has always been my life's work. Retirement hasn't changed that. Several neighbors gathered nearby after hearing commotion at the dock. They were surprised to learn about my conservation background. Some even thanked me for helping preserve the lake's natural beauty. It was an unexpected but pleasant conversation. The wildlife officers encouraged everyone to learn more about local fishing regulations. Understanding the law is always better than making assumptions. Knowledge prevents unnecessary conflicts. Respect goes a long way. Karen quietly admitted she had never actually read the state's fishing regulations. She simply assumed I must be violating them. Assumptions can create problems that facts easily solve. This situation proved exactly that. After our conversation, several homeowners became interested in conservation programs for private landowners. I was happy to share what I've learned over the years. Protecting wildlife benefits entire communities. Everyone has something valuable to contribute. The officer suggested organizing a neighborhood fishing safety workshop during the summer. It sounded like a wonderful idea. Education creates stronger and more respectful communities. We immediately began planning. My fishing dock became a place where neighbors gathered to learn about conservation and wildlife management. What began as an accusation became an opportunity to educate others. Sometimes misunderstandings can lead to positive outcomes. This was certainly one of them. Karen eventually apologized for making accusations without knowing the facts. I accepted her apology and wished her well. Everyone makes mistakes from time to time. What matters most is learning from them. The lake remained one of the healthiest fishing habitats in the region. Seeing wildlife thrive has always been more rewarding than catching fish. Conservation is about protecting tomorrow. That's a legacy worth preserving. Today, I still spend my mornings fishing peacefully from my dock. The sunrise never gets old. Retirement has given me the time to appreciate life's simple pleasures. Quiet mornings are hard to beat. Wildlife conservation isn't just a career. It's a lifelong commitment. Every responsible action helps preserve nature for future generations. Small efforts often make the biggest difference. The outdoors deserves our respect. Looking back, I'm grateful the wildlife officers responded professionally and respectfully. Their commitment to education reflects the very best of public service. Communities thrive when people work together. Conservation is no exception. This experience reminded me that knowing the law is always better than assuming it. Respecting property rights and wildlife regulations benefits everyone involved. A little understanding can prevent a lot of conflict. Facts remain our greatest ally. Karen expected wildlife officers to punish an illegal fisherman. Instead, they shook hands with an old conservation partner and lifelong wildlife advocate. The truth has a funny way of revealing itself when the facts finally arrive. And that's how this lakeside HOA story comes to an end.